Here is what actually unfolds for two individuals with identical salaries, the same city, the same entry-level position on the same Monday morning. One of them steps away at 58, not because the organization pushed him out, but because the numbers confirmed he could with over $3 million net worth and $3,000 per month in real estate cash flow that lands whether he rises from bed or not. The other one is seated at a desk at 67 at a firm he did not select, computing whether the Social Security payment bridges the distance between what he accumulated and what rent demands. The separation between these two results is not a career distinction. It is not earnings. It is not fortune. It is 1 decade, their 50s. And the factor that determined it on both sides was not a single dramatic choice. It was a system. So which side of that system are you presently constructing? Your 50s are the final real compounding window before the runway expires. Most people treat that decade as a prize for enduring the previous 3. The truck they always desired, the kitchen overhaul, the apartment upgrade now that the children are mostly gone. And that spending impulse is precisely when the retirement gap shifts from recoverable to structural. I am going to walk you through what that gap actually resembles in figures, what generates it beneath the surface, why the conventional guidance most people receive in their 50s is structurally late by 15 years, and what a real construction strategy looks like at this stage, not in slogans, in mechanics. The financial advisor who appears at 50 with a target date fund recommendation and a portfolio review. I am going to return to him. He is performing his role. His role arrived 15 years late. That is the problem. By the way, I constructed a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically flawed. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the vulnerable points in your plan, and I only request your email to deliver the report so I do not store any of your financial data. Link in the description. Here is the metaphor. Your financial life is an aircraft attempting to lift off. The runway is time. Compounding is the engine. Every decade you spend constructing, investing consistently, reducing structural debt, creating income streams before you require them, you are laying runway behind you and generating airspeed. By your 50s, you cannot lay down more runway behind you. What exists is what exists. Your only task from 50 to 65 is to remain on the tarmac, keep the throttle open, and not swerve. The people who spend their 50s rewarding themselves, they swerve. Sometimes they swerve directly into a field and the field appears fine from a distance until the landing gear descends and there is nowhere to go. Hold that image. The runway returns. In a few minutes, I am going to walk you through what occurs with the withdrawal math when the market delivers a bad sequence in your first 3 years of retirement. It is more destructive than almost anyone in the financial media explains clearly. But first, I need to establish why your 50s are mechanically unlike any other decade, because most people have heard that the 50s matter without ever running the actual figures on what is legally available to them right now. The Bureau of Labor Statistics consistently demonstrates that the 55 to 64 age cohort earns more in median weekly wages than any earlier working cohort. Your 50s are peak income. That is meaningful on its own. But stack this on top. As of 2025, if you are 50 or older, you can contribute $31,000 annually to a 401k. That is the standard limit of $2,350 plus a $7,500 catch-up contribution that exists exclusively for people over 50. You can also contribute $8,000 to a Roth IRA, $7,000 standard, $1,000 catch-up. Combined $39,000 per year in tax-advantaged space. That is a legal mechanism sitting in your name right now. Most people have heard about it. Most people do not utilize it at anything close to full capacity. Here is what it actually produces in real money. Take a 50-year-old with $300,000 already saved. They max the catch-up 401k at $31,000 per year from their own income. Add a 4% employer match on a $75,000 salary, $3,000 more per year. Add the Roth IRA at $8,000 annually. Total invested per year, $42,000 at 7% average annual return for 15 years. That person arrives at 65 with approximately $1.85 million. Now take the same person, identical starting balance, same 15 years, same market, but instead of maxing contributions, they save at the median rate implied by Vanguard's 2023 How America Saves report, which shows median 401k balances for workers 55 to 64 of approximately $87,500, suggesting ongoing contributions for mid-income earners of roughly $350 per month. That person arrives at 65 with approximately $890,000. Same starting point, same 15 years, nearly $1 million in difference. Every dollar of that gap traces back to how much of the available runway they utilized. You might assume the problem is that people do not know about catch-up contributions. 3 separate podcasts explain them in the last year alone. That is not the issue. The issue is the expense structure most people have assembled by the time they reach 52 or 53. Behavioral economists call it the ratchet effect. Spending ratchets up with income and almost never ratchets back down without an external shock. Every raise through the 40s funded something real. A better apartment, a newer car, vacations that felt earned, costs associated with children who were genuinely expensive for 2 decades. Each individual decision was defensible. Collectively, they constructed a cost structure that leaves no room for the catch-up window to operate. When income grew, spending followed by default. The money was spoken for before the window even opened. This is not a character problem. It is inertia. And inertia is the actual adversary here, not lack of information. There is a compounding tail on this that most people never observe until it lands. A dollar invested at 50 has 15 years to work before 65. A dollar invested at 30 had 35 years. Same market, same fund, same dollar. The 30-year-old's dollar produces 4.1 times more wealth at 65. Your 50s are where most people finally start the clock in earnest. The math does not pause while you decide if you feel ready. This is where it gets genuinely interesting, and this is the part most retirement conversations miss entirely. You believe the cost of spending your 50s instead of building is a smaller account balance at 65. That is the visible cost. The invisible cost, the one that actually reshapes your daily life, is what a thin balance does to every decision you are legally and financially permitted to make after 62. Those are not the same thing. At 62, the Social Security Administration presents you with a choice. Take your benefit now or wait. For anyone born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. Take the benefit at 62 and you receive 70% of your full monthly benefit permanently. Wait until 70 and you receive 124%. On a $2,000 monthly full benefit representative of a median income working career, the difference is $1,400 versus $2,280 per month for the rest of your life. For someone in reasonable health who lives to 88, waiting to 70 produces roughly $130,000 more dollars in total lifetime Social Security income on that $2,000 benefit. For higher earners, proportionally more. The math on waiting is almost always correct if you can afford to wait. But here is the trap. The person who spent their 50s who arrives at 62 with a thin account and a monthly budget with no margin cannot afford to wait. The Social Security check is not optional for them. They take it at 62. They lock in the 70% permanently. They live on it. And that decision was not made at 62. It was made at 53 when the truck seemed reasonable. It was made at 56 when the vacation went on a card that took 9 months to clear. It was made at 59 when the adult child needed help with a security deposit and the money came from savings instead of real estate cash flow. Your 50s do not set your retirement account balance. They set the decisions you are financially permitted to make a decade later. That is the invisible cost. The account figure is what people measure. The optionality is what determines the quality of the rest of your life. By the way, hit subscribe if you are finding value in this. Otherwise, the algorithm may genuinely never surface these videos to you again. Let me provide you a parable. A man I will call Henry. 30 years as a project manager for a regional construction firm. Solid income, consistent career, genuine work ethic. His philosophy about money was uncomplicated. He worked hard, he deserved a good life, and he would figure out retirement when he got there. When he got there, turned out to be 57 when a corporate acquisition eliminated his position. 11 weeks of severance, $8,200 after taxes. 401k balance, $62,000. Monthly mortgage, $2,400. He found a new position in 6 weeks, $14,000 a year less. He told himself it was temporary, he would make it up, things would normalize. At 62, the Social Security check became structural to the monthly budget. He took it early. 14 months later, the equity market pulled back 18%. His 401k, which he was already drawing from monthly to supplement the income gap, fell from $89,000 to $72,000 while he was making withdrawals. He did not get to choose the timing. Nobody does. Henry is not a failure. He is a system story. The system he constructed through his 50s was optimized for comfort and present standard of living. It was not optimized for optionality. The capacity to make the better decision when the better decision requires a financial cushion and the patience to wait behind it. Optionality is what permits you to decline Social Security at 62. Optionality is what permits you to hold an equity position through a bad market year instead of selling at the bottom to cover rent. You construct optionality in your 50s, or you discover its absence at 63, and you find out which scenario you inhabit when the market decides to test the architecture you assembled. Now let me show you the other side of spending your 50s. Because when I say spending your 50s, I do not always mean a second home or a boat. Sometimes the drain is quieter than that. Sometimes the most expensive thing you purchased in your 50s was a pattern. The Kaiser Family Foundation tracks employer-sponsored health insurance premiums every year. In 2024, the average annual premium for family coverage was $25,572. Your employer covers most of it. You do not feel it move through your checking account. Here is what happens when you depart the job at 60 or 62 before Medicare eligibility at 65. You fund that cost yourself. Affordable Care Act marketplace benchmark plans for a 60-year-old run between $13,000 and $20,000 annually, depending on your state and your income level. That is between $1,080 and $1,167 per month in premiums before a single deductible copay or prescription cost is added. A couple I will call the Deans retired at 61 and 60 with $600,000 in combined savings. They modeled the 4% rule. The math cleared on paper and they stopped working. What they did not model was the 5-year healthcare bridge to Medicare. Their actual annual healthcare cost, premiums, copays, and one outpatient procedure averaged $22,000 per year. They had modeled $8,000. The unmodeled gap, $100,000 in costs over 5 years, withdrawn from a portfolio during the exact window when you least want to be drawing at an accelerated rate. They are functional. They work part-time to reduce the withdrawal rate. Functional is not what they planned. That is one hidden drain. Here is another one that appears on almost no retirement planning spreadsheet. The Pew Research Center found that approximately 47% of Americans between 45 and 64 are simultaneously providing financial support to aging parents and to adult children. The average annual cost contributions toward a parent's care, supplementing an adult child's rent, emergency family transfers, runs between $8,000 and $15,000 per year, depending on the family. Call it $12,000 per year over a decade of your 50s. That is $120,000. At 7% over 15 years, That same $120,000 invested at 50 would have grown to $331,000 at 65. The emotional accounting of helping your family is zero. Of course you do it. The mathematical accounting runs in the background regardless of the emotional accounting. And then there is gray divorce. The divorce rate among Americans over 50 has roughly doubled since the 1990s. According to Pew Research data, the Rand Corporation estimated that gray divorce reduces household wealth by approximately 50% on average because two separate households must now be funded from an asset pool that previously supported one. At 55, with $400,000 in combined net worth, a gray divorce exits both parties with approximately $200,000 each. Not catastrophic, but the wealth-building decade you need to execute now runs without a second income, often with a restructured cost structure, often with legal costs attached. People recover from this. It changes the geometry of the runway significantly. The field gets closer. None of these drains are exotic risks. All three are ordinary American life events that occur with statistical regularity in the 50 to 65 age band. The people who constructed strong, diversified income structures through their 30s and 40s, rental cash flow, dividend income, a large asset base can absorb all of them from cash flow without touching principal. The people who did not have to choose between the family obligation and the retirement account, and the compounding tail runs regardless of which choice they make. The gap I am about to show you in actual figures is larger than most people expect, not because I am dramatizing it, because the math is patient and it has had decades to accumulate. Path A at 50. This is someone who started constructing at 22. By 40, they had approximately $1 million in total net worth, investment accounts plus real estate equity, built through consistent automated investing and multiple income properties acquired over the decade. Over the 40s, with continued contributions and compounding on a growing base, real estate cash flow partially reinvested. They arrive at 50 with approximately $2.3 million in total net worth. Roughly $2 million in liquid investment accounts, $300,000 in real estate equity across multiple properties. The salary is now over $100,000 per year. At 50, they immediately begin maxing the catch-up limits. $31,000 to the 401k, $8,000 to the Roth, employer match on top of that. The real estate produces roughly $3,000 per month in net income. At 55, total net worth exceeds $3 million. 4% of $3 million is $120,000 per year. Their current annual spending is $82,000. The surplus, $38,000 per year, is the buffer, the market correction buffer, the healthcare emergency buffer, the gray divorce buffer, the adult child crisis buffer. They have it. At 58, they stop going to the job, not from a philosophy about freedom, from an arithmetic conclusion that held under three different stress scenarios. Path B at 50. At 40, net worth was approximately $58,700, mostly a partially recovered 401k and a thin savings account. In the mid-40s, they cleared consumer debt and got more serious about contributions. By 50, investable assets total approximately $240,000. They begin contributing $15,000 per year to the 401k. Real effort, not the maximum, at 7% over 10 years from that $240,000 base plus $15,000 per year. At 60, the account holds approximately $580,000. At 4% withdrawal, that is $23,200 per year from the portfolio. Social Security at 62, which the budget requires because there is no other income stream to bridge the gap, adds approximately $14,700 per year on a median full benefit reduced permanently by 30% for early claiming. Total retirement income $37,900 per year against a median annual expenditure for Americans over 65 of approximately $57,000. The gap is $19,100. Every year, that gap fills through spending cuts, principal draws, or part-time work. When you draw principal faster than the portfolio grows it, The account is on a one-way clock. When that clock reaches zero, you are in your late 70s or early 80s, and the decisions are not gentle ones. The gap at retirement between Path A and Path B exceeds $2 million. Two careers, similar incomes for the past 15 years. The divergence happened at 22 and compounded silently through every decade that followed. The 50s reflected what had been constructed. The 60s revealed the ledger. Neither person understood the ledger while it was forming. They both felt fine at the time. I mentioned the financial advisor who appears in your 50s. Let me name him Carl. Carl has 32 years in the business, licensed, credentialed, and genuinely well-intentioned. His guidance to clients in their 50s is technically correct by industry standard. Maximize the 401k, pick a target date fund matched to your retirement year, maintain 6 months of expenses in cash, and do not take Social Security before full retirement age. Every one of those recommendations is right, and every one of them arrives approximately 15 to 20 years after the decisions that actually constructed or failed to construct the retirement outcome. The choices that created Path A versus Path B, the loan at 22, the lifestyle ratchet through the 30s, the thin savings rate through the 40s, happened before Carl was in the room. Nobody was in the room for those. The conventional financial planning industry is structured to manage assets, not to construct them. Carl enters the relationship when there are assets to manage. He optimizes from that point forward. Carl's firm charges 1% of assets under management annually. On $400,000 in assets, that is $4,000 per year. Over 15 years of retirement compounded at 7%, that fee costs the client approximately $97,000 in foregone growth. Not because Carl extracts unfair value, because the incentive structure rewards him for gathering assets and charging a percentage, not for appearing 15 years earlier when the consequential decisions were being made carelessly. That is not a moral failing on Carl's part. That is the architecture of the industry. Here is where Carl is actually useful. The clients who arrive at his office in their 50s with real diversified asset bases, the Path A profiles, get genuine value from the relationship. The decisions at that level require expertise. Roth conversion ladders during lower income years before required minimum distributions begin. Depreciation schedules on rental properties that reduce taxable income by $30,000 annually. Social Security bridge strategy execution, trust structures for estate planning. Carl is skilled at this level of complexity. The clients who arrive in their 50s with thin accounts get Carl doing his best. Same tools, smaller base. You can optimize a small figure in 100 different ways, and it resolves to a small figure with better tax treatment. Carl knows this. He does not say it directly. He uses phrases like, "We will work with what we have." That sentence is true. It is also not the same sentence as "you will be comfortable in retirement." That distinction lives entirely in everything Carl does not say during the first meeting. Let me make this concrete with one specific scenario. Call her Diane, 51 years old, single, operations manager at a regional firm, annual salary $86,000, 401k balance $140,000, savings account $12,000, no real estate, no taxable brokerage, no consumer debt. She paid off the car last year. She has been meaning to get more serious about retirement for 3 years, and this week she finally ran the actual figures. Scenario 1, current trajectory. She contributes 6% of salary to the 401k. The employer matches 4%. Total annual contribution $8,600. She adds $200 per month to the savings account. At 65, after 14 years at 7%, the 401k grows to approximately $555,000. The savings account holds approximately $68,000. Total at retirement, $623,000. 4% withdrawal produces $24,900 per year from the portfolio. Her Social Security full retirement age benefit based on a career at $86,000 per year is approximately $21,000 per year at 67. Total income $45,900 against $62,000 in annual expenses. She is short by $16,100 annually. She takes Social Security at 62 instead of waiting, which reduces her benefit to approximately $14,700 per year. Total income drops to $39,600. She cuts annual spending to match that. That is a $22,000 reduction from her current lifestyle. The math holds. It is not the retirement she imagined when she was 43 and assumed the details would sort themselves out. Scenario 2, 3 structural changes starting this month. First, she raises her 401k contribution to the full catch-up limit, $31,000 per year, up from the $5,160 she contributes now. The employer continues matching 4%, adding $3,140. Second, she opens a Roth IRA and contributes $8,000 per year, funded by cutting $15,000 in annual discretionary spending, roughly $1,250 per month, across dining frequency, travel pace, and subscription services she had stopped actively using. Third, she does not upgrade her apartment when the lease renews next spring, absorbing a $160 monthly rent increase rather than moving somewhere more expensive. At 65, 14 years later, the 401k holds approximately $137,000. The Roth IRA holds approximately $180,000. The savings account continues at $68,000. Total approximately $1,285,000. 4% produces $55,400 per year from the portfolio. She waits for Social Security until 70. She can because the portfolio covers the gap years without stress. At 70, her benefit is 124% of the full amount, approximately $26,040 per year. Total annual income at 70, $81,440 against $62,000 in expenses. She has a $19,400 annual buffer. Same person, same salary, 14 years. 3 structural decisions that required no extraordinary income and no complex investment instruments. The most common piece of retirement guidance in America is you should have started earlier. Profound insight, remarkably actionable. I am going to place it on a motivational poster with a stock photo of a sunrise and sell it at financial planning conferences. It will outsell everything else at the table. Here's the part that never makes it into a retirement calculator. You can know every figure in this video. The catch-up contribution limits, the Social Security timing math, the sequence of returns dynamic. And it still does not produce a retirement plan that survives contact with reality because the interactions between healthcare costs before Medicare, withdrawal sequencing, and sequence of returns risk do not exist in a single accessible place. So I wrote a book called The Exit Code. It is an analysis of 50 years of actual retirement data, not opinion, not the 4% rule dressed in new graphics, distilled into what I call a mathematical framework for exiting the rat race. 2 specific elements worth flagging because they connect directly to what we have been discussing. First, the dynamic withdrawal method, which replaces the 4% rule with a responsive withdrawal system that adjusts based on how the portfolio is actually performing. So a bad sequence of returns in year 1 does not lock you into an elevated withdrawal rate that depletes the account on a fixed timeline. Second, what I call the 58% rule. The statistical reality that the majority of people who attempt to retire or semi-retire before 62 end up back in the workforce within 4 years, and not because they ran out of money, because they did not construct the buffer architecture that keeps them out.